So picture this. I'm pulling my little red Volvo off the Bernie Street exit in Springfield this week. You've all been there. It's a routine trip to the doctor's office for me, and frankly, my physical checked out, so I'm tip-top. And I slowed down because the road, it's okay to laugh, because the road is all torn up. I don't know if you've been down there lately, but I don't know what they're doing. They're building something. In Springfield, it seems like they're always doing something. So down there right now, the road is all torn up. And you've probably been there. And I slow down to pull off the exit, because, you know, it is a little red Volvo and it is a little old, so I'm trying not to, like, you know, destroy the suspension even more than it's already, you know, you can sort of see. So, and as I look to my left, and I slow down, and there are these two wonderful ladies. I call them wonderful, I don't know, probably they were. And they were standing there right next to the exit ramp, in that sort of no man or woman's land, you know, sort of like the green strip. And they were just picking these wonderful wildflowers. Wonderful flowers growing among the weeds. You know, the black-eyed Susans, and those little daisies that you see. Little white flowers that I don't have any name for, you know. Now I know what you're thinking. You clearly had a pretty good look. But it was one of those moments where it was just a fast look. And the story in that look stuck with me. Not totally weird, just a little bit. And what matters about this? Why am I telling you this? Although for all I know, one of you could have been one of those two ladies, although I don't think so. Remember, split second look, you know? Just say, I think what it means to me, at least, is the surprising beauty that can happen in the most unexpected places. Because I saw your faces when I said picking flowers, and I saw the smiles that turned up in some of your mouths. Here I was, a traveler, on the way to something, coming from somewhere else, and these people were just there, harvesting the beauty that, frankly, I would have casually driven by, without much of a glance. It's as though, by their being there, I was able to notice the place more clearly. I really think, something like this was happening for Jacob on that night so long ago. He was alone, a little isolated, missing any sort of place to call home, wanting a family. Not really wanting a family is God. And in that moment, God steps in. And Jacob discovers that something more is going on, that he's got a promise from God. And the world is so much bigger and stranger and a more amazing place than it was before. And here I am, dropping Jacob into our story. This time together you and I are sharing, like you already know him. And maybe you do, but just in case. Jacob is a biblical patriarch that I can admire. Here is a guy that was always looking for a better deal, a better lot for his life. Look at what the man did. He became rich and powerful, helped to found the great nation of Israel, married a beautiful girl, fought an angel, or something like one, and won. Or at least had maybe a draw. All pretty good stuff. He was definitely a winner. But what I really like about him is what we see in this passage. He had a dream in which he saw a stairway resting on the earth with its top reaching to heaven, and the angels of God were ascending on it and descending on it, ascending and descending. Fewer images in the Hebrew Bible have been so considered by the sages and the scholars. People like yourselves have wondered all sorts of things about that ladder. But one detail stands out. Why were the angels going up and down? Why not the reverse? Wouldn't angels have been coming down from heaven and then going up? What were the angels doing down here in the first place? Dreams are like that sometimes. They're scary, exciting, strange to understand. And sometimes even trying to figure them out can be tough. God doesn't really explain the dream to Jacob. He doesn't tell us what it means. He just asks him to take an action, to take that first step of faith, to move, or maybe, particularly in Jacob's case, to grow. Cast the seeds and grow. To become one of those happy little plants in God's garden, forgetting, of course, that clearly Jacob was already in that story, right? Probably not a black-eyed Susan or a daisy like, I don't think of Jacob as that. Maybe he's one of those like aloe plants that's all more spiky and green and big. I don't know, however you picture Jacob in God's garden. This leads me to our second passage from the book of Matthew. We have things growing all over the place in this passage. Weeds and plants and gardens. There's a harvest, a kingdom, and Jesus telling another parable. And just like the dreaming Jacob, the disciples don't know what to make of any of this lesson. Jesus even takes the time to explain it. That's why we skipped ahead to hear his explanation. But I suspect, frankly, even listening to that, some of us still are a little unsure exactly what all of that means. I could go on about Jacob, but really, I want to turn instead to those confused little disciples and that little parable of the weeds among the wheat. Because while I love Jacob, I think most people of faith today are more like the people in Matthew's gospel. Remember, Matthew's community was a community under siege, scholars tell us. They were a minority community. This small group was likely one of many small faith groups swallowed up in the Roman Empire. Small groups gathering. Sound familiar, really? We know that other early Christian groups chose to withdraw, heading to the deserts, escaping the challenges, or embracing different ones, choosing to leave the world. Matthew's community chooses to stay. But because of the message of Jesus, they could not embrace the values and practices of their society. So they stayed, but they were different. You probably know what that's like too. You stay in a place like this, and you're a little different. They represented an alternative, an inclusive community, which worked hard to rebuild its relationships and worked to address some of the damage of the larger society. The Roman Empire was not a nice place to live for most of its people, and especially with cities. We see them now as wonderful sites for tourists. But back in the day, with all those people pushed together and frankly no indoor plumbing to really speak of, or maybe some, but not like we have, not particularly pleasant places to be. Little wonder then that when they dreamed, these proto-Christians of a kingdom, they dreamed of a kingdom. And so I'd like to imagine them combing over the old accounts of Christ's message, hunting for anything Jesus had to say about the kingdom, because they wanted something and they dreamt of something better for themselves and the world. And with this little passage, they have a doozy. They've offered us something wonderfully unique. A kingdom that includes not just the good things, justice and salvation, freedom and mercy and all the rest, stuff real dreams are made of. No, they have a kingdom that's all mixed up. A kingdom that has some good mixed in with the bad. Sure, they blame the devil for it, but for all that mixing maybe, but still, there it is. The world, the field we live in, is just not a perfect place. But I don't need to tell any of that to you, do I? You all know. We're going to pray for folks who need the world to be a more perfect place in a little bit. No, I see in your eyes that have seen too many things that ought not to have been, too many friendships, relationships, or marriages cut short, too many ought-nots when it actually did. And if I missed the mark for each of you, consider that you probably know people in your life for whom that would be true. And we would call them neighbors or friends or even strangers. Too many weeds, and God only wants to offer you the bread of life. For remember, that's the grain we have here growing in this kingdom. That's grain to make bread. It's wheat. Bread for Christ to break and for us to share and for the world to change. Because honestly, dear friends, after I came to think about this passage, seeking the good news for you to share this morning, it really came down to one word: ratio. Because in my cold, calculating New England farmer born brain, I was thinking about how many weeds there were, really. And I was thinking about doing the mental calculus, if you will, the old sort of Puritan dance of, am I good enough? Am I grain enough and not enough weed, so to speak? And then I began to think, and this is where I think God's mercy began to dawn. The text tells us nothing about the ratio of good seed to bad weed. You can get all pessimistic about it if you want, but really the text tells us we don't get to judge. It's a weed after all. Those ladies on the roadside, they tell you those things that I thought were weeds, they were beauty. They could pick it out. Only the angels get to do that, to judge. So we know, we suspect, that there must be some weeds, enough to make the fire, to break the bread, to change the world, right? Some folks to be out there, outside in the land of the weeping and the gnashing of teeth, right? The text doesn't tell you how many. Any good farmer will tell you that sometimes a field can become a total loss. Too much rain, not enough rain, too many bugs, not enough bees, and so on. Here is God the farmer telling us there is enough in this world to save, even with the world's weeds and nasty bits and all the rest. One that would face all those weeds, the betrayal, the desertion, the trials, and the death, simply for the chance to come through all that fire and find you there. Maybe a little broken, maybe a little battered, but more than a little loved. So what's my point? I don't really think any of us here are weeds. And I'm not even really sure there are any weeds out there either, honestly.